ever tried eating healthy and exercising, but the scale just won't budge.
It's frustrating. Right.
Yeah, it makes you wonder, like, how much control do we actually have over our weight?
Well, today we're diving deep into obesity. We're going to untangle the web of factors that contribute to this global health challenge.
Awesome. We'll be using this medical presentation to guide our conversation.
Perfect.
So to kick things off, let's clarify what we're actually talking about when we say obesity.
Right, because it's not just about being overweight, is it?
Nope. The presentation emphasizes that it's specifically about having an excess of what?
Adipose tissue,
Yeah.
which is, fat.
Okay, so excess fat. And it goes on to say that it's not just the amount of fat that matters.
It's the distribution, too, like where you carry that fat.
Makes sense. So like a high waist to hip ratio, that's a red flag.
Exactly. It means you're carrying more weight around your middle.
Interesting. So how do we even measure obesity? I mean, most people just think of BMI.
Yeah, BMI or body mass index, it's definitely the most common tool.
But the presentation points out that it's not perfect.
Right, it doesn't really tell the whole story. Like, someone could be super muscular.
And have a high BMI, but not be obese.
Exactly.
So what other ways are there to measure obesity?
Well, there are skin fold thickness measurements, which use calipers.
To pinch your fat?
Pretty much. It estimates the amount of subcutaneous fat, the fat right under the skin.
Okay.
And there's densitometry. It's a fancy way of measuring body density.
To determine body composition.
Exactly. And then there are imaging techniques like CT scans and MRIs.
Those give you a really detailed look at your body tissues.
Right. But those are obviously more expensive.
So BMI is a good starting point. But we got to remember, it's not the whole picture.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about how common obesity is. The presentation hits us with a pretty alarming statistic.
Yeah.
Over 12% of the world's adult population is obese.
Wow. So imagine a group of 10 people. Statistically, one of them is struggling with obesity.
That's a lot. And the presentation is super clear that obesity is not just a cosmetic issue.
Oh, absolutely not. It's a serious medical condition with serious consequences.
Yeah, it impacts your whole body, doesn't it?
It affects everything, your heart, your blood sugar level.
Increased risk of cancer, even.
Absolutely. It's a major public health concern.
All right, well, let's dive into how our bodies regulate our weight. This presentation dives into the interplay of, like, endocrine and neural components.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Our bodies are constantly trying to maintain a stable weight.
Like, even when we try to force changes, whether it's overeating or dieting.
Right. There's this constant push and pull between our bodies and our environment.
So what are the key players in this weight regulation system?
Well, the presentation really focuses on this hormone called leptin. Have you heard of it?
Vaguely, but refresh my memory.
So leptin's produced by fat cells, and it acts like a messenger to your brain. It basically says, hey, we've got this much energy stored up.
Interesting. So the more fat you have, the more leptin you produce.
Exactly. And when leptin levels are high, it signals your brain to eat less and burn more calories.
Okay, so it's like a built-in feedback mechanism.
Right. But here's where things get tricky. In a lot of cases of obesity, people develop what's called leptin resistance.
Leptin what?
Resistance. It means their brain stops responding properly to leptin signals.
Oh, no. So even if you have plenty of fat stored, their brain doesn't get the memo to slow down.
Exactly. And they keep feeling hungry.
So it's not just about willpower. There's a biological reason why it's hard to lose weight for some people.
Exactly. Leptin resistance is a key piece of the obesity puzzle.
That makes a lot of sense. But the presentation also mentions that leptin is just one part of the story.
Oh, definitely. There are tons of other factors that influence our appetite. Things like other hormones, neurotransmitters.
And let's not forget our psychology and environment.
Right. It's a super complex system.
All right, well, the presentation breaks down the causes of obesity into 4 main categories:
Let's hear them.
lifestyle, psychological, medical, and genetic.
A good mix. And often these factors are all intertwined.
Okay, let's start with lifestyle. That's a big one, right? Especially in today's world.
Absolutely. We're surrounded by calorie-dense foods. Everywhere you turn, there's something tempting.
And we're not exactly moving as much as our ancestors, are we?
Nope. We're spending more time sitting at desks, in cars.
It's like our environment is working against us.
It really is. And even small changes in our calorie intake or expenditure, they add up over time.
So like that extra cookie every day.
It can lead to significant weight gain over the course of a year.
Yikes. Okay, so we've got this obesogenic environment, but what about the psychological piece?
Well, mental health and eating habits are definitely linked. For some people, food becomes a way to cope with stress or negative emotions.
That's emotional eating, right?
Right. And while it's normal to turn to food for comfort sometimes, if it becomes a habit, it can lead to weight gain.
It's a tough cycle to break. But it's important to address the root cause of those emotional eating patterns. Okay, next up, medical causes. Are there any specific conditions that can contribute to obesity?
Yeah, there are quite a few. Endocrine disorders like Cushing's syndrome.
That affects your hormones, right?
Yeah, hypothyroidism too.
That's when your thyroid is underactive, right?
Exactly. And there are certain brain disorders that can mess with appetite regulation.
So it's crucial to rule out any underlying medical issues.
Definitely. And don't forget medications. Some can cause weight gain as a side effect.
Like antidepressants and steroids, right?
Exactly.
Okay, well, last but not least, genetics.
Right. Our genes can predispose us to obesity.
Like, some people might be genetically more likely to gain weight than others.
Right. But remember, genes aren't destiny. Our lifestyle and environment can really influence how those genes are expressed.
Okay, so genes load the gun, but our choices pull the trigger.
Well said.
We've learned so much already. But before we dive into the complications and management of obesity, we have to give a shout out to the London Heartbeats Z Academy in the UK.
Yes. They've been amazing with their educational support.
Seriously, their dedication to sharing knowledge is fantastic. They have over 150 courses on all sorts of medical topics.
I know, it's incredible.
And listeners, be sure to check them out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Spotify, and YouTube. They've got free, regular updates. You won't want to miss their future discussions.
They're really top-notch.
Okay, back to our deep dive. We've laid the groundwork. We know the causes of obesity. But what about the consequences?
That's what we'll explore next time. We'll delve into the serious health complications.
And discuss the latest strategies for managing this complex condition. Stay tuned.
It's going to be fascinating. Welcome back. You know, last time we were talking about our body's energy balance system.
Yeah, all those hormones and signals working together, it's pretty incredible.
It is, and when it gets thrown off, that's when weight gain and other health issues can start cropping up.
Right, and today we're going to zoom in on a really fascinating aspect of all this, the psychology of obesity.
Oh, yeah. It's not just about the physical stuff, is it?
Not at all. We're talking about a relationship with food, emotions, behaviors.
It really adds a whole other layer of complexity. Because, I mean, food is so much more than just fuel, you know?
Absolutely. It's tied to our culture, our memories, our social gatherings. Even just the smell of certain foods can trigger strong emotions.
Oh, totally. It's like, think about the smell of your grandma's cooking or something. Takes you right back, doesn't it?
It's so true. But for some people, that relationship with food can become kind of tricky.
Yeah, it can get complicated, and that's where things like emotional eating come into play. We touched on it briefly last time.
Yeah, using food to cope with stress or sadness or just boredom. Can we unpack that a little more?
Sure. So when we're feeling stressed or down, certain foods, especially the ones loaded with sugar, fat, and salt, they trigger the release of those feel-good chemicals in our brains, like dopamine and serotonin.
Oh, I know those feelings. It's like instant gratification, but then...
But then the guilt sets in, right?
So it's like a temporary fix, but it doesn't really solve the problem.
Exactly. And for some people, it turns into this cycle, you know? Feeling bad, eating to feel better, feeling guilty.
It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember that emotional eating, it's often a symptom of something deeper going on, isn't it?
Absolutely. It could be an unmet need, a past trauma, some underlying emotional issue that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, it's not just about willpower. It's about getting to the root of the problem.
Exactly.
And that's where therapy can be super helpful, right?
Yeah, definitely. It can give people the tools and support they need to develop healthier coping mechanisms.
So instead of reaching for that bag of chips when you're stressed, you learn to go for a walk or call a friend or...
Or journal, meditate, whatever works for you.
Right. Okay, so that's emotional eating. But I know the presentation also talked about disinhibition. What's that all about?
Yeah. Disinhibition is basically when you overeat in response to certain cues or situations, even if you're not physically hungry.
Okay. Like what kind of cues?
It could be anything, really, like seeing a delicious dessert menu, going to a party where there's a ton of food.
Ooh, I could relate to that.
Or even just watching a food commercial on TV, like your brain gets hijacked.
So it's kind of like a lack of impulse control when it comes to food.
Pretty much. And there are lots of things that can contribute to disinhibition. Biological factors, learned behaviors, even cultural norms.
Like portion sizes in restaurants. You get this giant plate of food. It's almost like you're expected to eat it all.
I know, it's crazy. And it can be really hard to resist those external cues.
So what can people do?
Well, there are strategies, like sharing a meal with a friend, ordering an appetizer instead of an entree.
Being more mindful of your portion sizes.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got emotional eating, disinhibition. What other psychological factors come into play with obesity?
Well, the presentation also talked about body image and self-esteem. People who struggle with those things, they're more likely to have unhealthy eating habits and a harder time losing weight.
Yeah, if you don't feel good about yourself, it's hard to make positive changes.
Right, and then you add weight stigma on top of that. It's like a double whammy.
Weight stigma.
Yeah, the discrimination and prejudice people face because of their weight, it can really erode self-esteem and make the whole situation even worse.
It's like this awful cycle. You feel bad about your weight, you eat to cope, you gain more weight, feel worse. It's heartbreaking.
It really is. We need to do a better job of challenging weight stigma and promoting body positivity. Everyone deserves to feel good about themselves, no matter their size.
I couldn't agree more. So how can we support people who are struggling with these issues?
Well, first off, we can all be more mindful of the language we use. Avoid making hurtful comments about people's bodies.
And we need to challenge those negative stereotypes, right? Promote body diversity in the media and all that.
Yes, create a more accepting and inclusive environment for everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But for individuals who are struggling, therapy can be really helpful.
Definitely. It can help people develop a more positive body image, improve self-esteem, address those emotional issues that might be driving those unhealthy eating habits.
So therapy isn't just for mental health issues. It can be a valuable tool for weight management too.
Totally. And there are specific types of therapy that are particularly effective for this, like cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT.
Oh, I've heard of that. What's the basic idea?
It's about identifying and changing those negative thought patterns and behaviors that contribute to unhealthy eating. So, if someone's an emotional eater, a therapist might help them figure out their triggers and come up with alternative coping strategies.
So instead of reaching for a bag of cookies when you're stressed, you might learn to go for a run or something.
Exactly. Or practice mindfulness or call a friend.
CBT also helps people set realistic goals.
Yes, and learn how to deal with setbacks in a healthy way, because there will be setbacks. It's part of the process.
It sounds very empowering.
It is, and the research shows that it really works.
Well, this has been a really insightful discussion. I think we often underestimate just how much our minds play a role in all this.
It's such a crucial piece of the puzzle. Addressing the emotional and behavioral aspects of obesity is just as important as focusing on the physical stuff.
It's about taking a holistic approach to health and well-being.
Exactly.
And listeners, remember, if you're struggling with your weight or your relationship with food, you're not alone.
Please reach out for help. Talk to your doctor, a therapist, a support group. There are people who care and want to support you.
And be kind to yourself. This stuff is hard. It takes time and effort. Just keep learning, keep growing.
And celebrate those small victories along the way.
That's so important. All right, well, that wraps up part 2 of our deep dive into obesity. Next time, we'll be exploring the latest advances in managing this complex condition.
We'll talk about cutting-edge medications, innovative surgical techniques, and even the future of obesity treatment.
It's going to be fascinating. So make sure you join us then. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've gone deep into the world of obesity.
Haven't we? It's amazing how complex it all is, from the hormones to the psychology to the environmental factors.
It really is. And today, in this final part, we're shifting gears. We're moving from understanding the problem to exploring the solutions.
The cutting edge of obesity management. I'm excited to dive in.
Me too. And I think a good place to start is with medications. We touched on pharmacotherapy before, but I'm really curious about the latest developments.
Yeah, there's a lot happening in that world. We talked about how current medications work mainly by suppressing appetite or blocking fat absorption.
Right, and while those can be effective, they often have side effects.
Exactly. So researchers are constantly looking for new medications that are both safe and effective, with fewer of those unwanted side effects.
So what's on the horizon? What are some of the most promising areas of research?
Well, one area that's generating a lot of buzz is targeting gut hormones.
Oh, yeah. I remember we briefly touched on GLP-1 receptor agonists in part 2. Those were originally developed for type 2 diabetes, but they're showing promise for weight loss too.
Right. And how they work is pretty fascinating. They basically mimic the effects of this naturally occurring hormone called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1.
Which helps regulate blood sugar and appetite.
Exactly. It's like tapping into the body's own weight control system.
I like that. And you said the results have been pretty impressive.
Yeah, they have. Studies have shown that GLP-1 receptor agonists can lead to significant weight loss, sometimes over 10% of body weight.
Wow. Plus, they improve blood sugar control and other metabolic markers.
Exactly. So it's a win-win.
Are there any other gut hormones being explored for weight loss?
There are. Another one that's really interesting is amylin. It's produced by the pancreas along with insulin.
Okay. And what does amylin do?
Well, it helps slow down gastric emptying. Basically, it means food stays in your stomach longer, making you feel fuller for longer.
So you're less likely to overeat.
Right. Plus, amylin also suppresses glucagon, which is a hormone that raises blood sugar levels.
So it's hitting weight gain from multiple angles. Are there any medications that specifically target amylin?
There are, and they've shown some really promising results in trials. Significant weight loss, improved blood sugar control.
It's amazing how much we're learning about these gut hormones and their role in weight regulation.
It really is. And the research is ongoing. I mean, who knows what other hormones and pathways they'll discover.
It's pretty exciting to think about. But let's not forget about surgery. Are there any new developments in bariatric surgery?
Oh, always. Surgical techniques are constantly being refined. One area that's really taking off is less invasive procedures like endoscopic bariatric therapies.
Endoscopic, so no big incisions.
Nope. They use an endoscope, which is basically a flexible tube with a camera and tiny instruments. They insert it through the mouth right into the stomach.
So it's way less invasive than traditional bariatric surgery, which usually involves open surgery or laparoscopy.
Exactly. And that means shorter recovery times and fewer complications.
So what kind of endoscopic procedures are we talking about?
Well, one example is intragastric balloon therapy. They basically put a deflated balloon in your stomach and then fill it with saline solution.
So it takes up space in your stomach, making you feel full.
Right. It's like a temporary gastric band.
Interesting. Who's a good candidate for that?
It's often used for people who aren't eligible for traditional bariatric surgery or those who want to try a less invasive option first.
Okay, makes sense. Any other endoscopic procedures out there?
Yeah, there's endoscopic sleeve gastroplasty. They use the endoscope to suture the stomach, making it into a smaller sleeve-shaped pouch.
Like a less invasive version of a sleeve gastrectomy.
Exactly. And it's shown some great results. Significant weight loss, lower risks, faster recovery.
It's amazing how technology is making these procedures less and less invasive.
It really is. And the field is constantly evolving, so I'm sure we'll see even more advancements in the future.
Okay, but I want to zoom out for a second and talk about the bigger picture of obesity treatment. We have all these tools now, medications, surgery, but are we really getting to the root of the problem?
That's a great question. And honestly, while we've made huge strides in treatment, we still have a long way to go when it comes to prevention and addressing those underlying causes.
You're right. It's not just about managing the symptoms. It's about preventing obesity in the first place.
Absolutely. And that requires a much broader approach. We need to look at things like food environments, physical activity levels, socioeconomic factors.
It's about creating a society that supports healthy living for everyone.
Exactly. It goes way beyond individual choices.
Okay, let's talk about the future. What are some of the most exciting areas of research that you think could really revolutionize how we approach obesity?
Well, personalized medicine is a big one. We're realizing that obesity isn't one size fits all. Different people respond to different treatments in different ways.
So tailoring treatment to the individual.
Right. And with advances in genomics, we're getting much better at identifying those individual differences and figuring out who will respond best to what.
That's amazing, taking the guesswork out of treatment.
Exactly. And it's not just medications. We're also learning more about how the gut microbiome can influence weight and metabolism.
Wait, our gut bacteria can affect how our bodies respond to weight loss interventions?
Absolutely. Those trillions of bacteria living in our gut, they play a huge role in how we process food, how we store energy, even how we regulate our appetite.
So could we manipulate the gut microbiome to help people lose weight?
That's what scientists are trying to figure out. They're looking at prebiotics, probiotics, even fecal microbiota transplantation.
FMT, that sounds intense.
It is. It involves transferring fecal matter from a healthy donor to a recipient with the goal of restoring a healthy balance of gut bacteria.
Wow. And you're saying that's showing promise for obesity?
The early research is looking promising, yes. It's all pretty cutting edge.
It's mind-blowing how much we're learning about the gut and its connection to our overall health. It seems like we're on the verge of a whole new era of obesity treatment.
I agree. Moving away from those one-size-fits-all solutions to more personalized and targeted therapies, it's an exciting time to be in this field.
It really is. Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. We've covered so much ground from the basic science to the latest advancements, and it's clear that the future of obesity treatment is full of possibilities.
It's been a fascinating journey.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us. We hope you found this deep dive informative and empowering.
Remember, knowledge is power. The more we understand about obesity, the better equipped we are to take care of ourselves and advocate for change.
And if you're struggling with your weight or your relationship with food, please know that you're not alone. There's help out there. Don't be afraid to reach out to your doctor, a therapist, a support group.
Exactly. And be kind to yourself. This journey isn't easy, so celebrate your successes, learn from your setbacks, and keep moving forward.
Well said. Thanks again for tuning into the deep dive. We'll see you next time.